We have this model that I really like called the powergram. It's a way that couples can map out the areas of power and decision making, and that changes over time too. Areas of responsibility, but if there's like this is me and this is him, like where's the overlap? Uh, where's the area of autonomy, right, where we get to decide without checking with the other person, what's so. Where are the things we must decide together in this relationship? And again, that changes over time. Very different than in my first marriage, and we were all merged and raising children together, and everything seemed joint.
This is episode number 655 with Robin Temple and Michael Moore. We are going to be talking about how to stop losing yourself in relationships and how to be happy together as a couple. This is a couple that has been together for 30 years. They are therapists, and you're going to want to listen to this, whether you're in a relationship or not. Hi, everybody. I'm Sandy Weiner. Welcome back to Last First Date Radio, where we believe it is never too late to go on your last first date. And I have been coaching for about 18 years now, and I've written 3 books to help you on your journey to lasting love. My latest book is Love at Last, and this is about couples who found love later in life. These are true stories. The book I wrote before that is a handbook for dating. It's called Choice Points in Dating, and this is a guide for all aspects of dating. And the first book I wrote is called Becoming a Woman of Value, How to Thrive in Life and Love. All 3 of these books are available on Amazon for Kindle, paperback, and Audible. Before I bring my podcast guests on today, I want to invite you, if you're not yet a member, to join Your Last First Date. This is my Facebook group. It is a safe and sane space for anyone, any woman over 40 who would like to get some real, genuine support with their dating life, with their love life, with their communication skills. This is a positive place of support, so join us at Your Last First Date. And now for my guests. Married for over 30 years, Robin Temple and Michael Moore can help you have healthier relationships. They have led workshops and retreats for more than 1,500 couples, and they have trained dozens of leaders in couples work. They provide retreats and coaching that delivers positive change quickly and predictably. Welcome to the show, Robin and Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm excited to have you here. I always like to find a little bit about the podcast guest and the work you do. What inspired you to do this work, and what has helped you make it through the challenges of a 30-year marriage?
We've both been through divorce. After 10 years, Michael, something similar, a little less anyway. And, I certainly, like a lot of people, I think, was left with a lot of questions about how that came to be, and not a lot of self-awareness about my part in the breakdown of my first marriage. Just a lot of disappointment and heartache and pain, but not really, so I left me really questioning and wondering about this whole thing of long-term relationships and how they can really endure when there's so much risk of pain and disappointment. So I was personally wanting to understand that. I'd already, been a psychotherapist for some time, but I also decided I needed to, so I went back to graduate school to learn about marriage and family therapy. I figured, well, that's a place to learn about it. But at the same time, I was on a personal quest to try to understand a lot more. And we teach what we need to learn. And so that was kind of how it started. And then in that process, we had a very strong kind of magnetic connection, but I couldn't really see how we were going to end up blending our lives. It just didn't seem likely. I had 3 children, Michael had 1. We had very different lifestyles. And so we were just really taking our time before we tried to actually combine our lives in any way. And I was just uncertain. I think we both were. uncertain about what this whole path is for long-term relationships.
Well, when we moved in together for a summer just to kind of check it out,
Yeah.
and assuming
Just
I
trial,
assumed it was
just
going to
see.
be amazing. I was so excited, and then immediately it was difficult, like right from the start, which was pretty shocking. And we'd put our kids through a bunch of changes, and the fact that it really didn't look hopeful was a challenge. And
We have a lot of differences.
and then at some point, and the hardest part was our differences around parenting was really a challenge. I kind of accepted the Midwestern ethos that I grew up with, that the most important thing is to teach kids to be self-reliant and competent adults. Robin's a founder of the local Waldorf school, so she had a very different orientation.
Like very nurturing, protect their innocence, let their imagination flourish, extend the childhood, creativity as long as possible. Very sheltering in a way.
And since then, we've realized the obvious, that kids need both things. But at the time, it seemed to us that those were mutually incompatible, and we were really threatened by each other. And so
didn't seem like it was going to. Well, we didn't even mention what incredibly neat person he is, and organized in space, and how I am very much the opposite. And so once we're actually in the same space, oh my gosh, it seemed hopelessly incompatible.
So eventually, Robin, as part of her quest to understand more about relationships, declared that she was going off for 3 8-day trainings, 24 days of training. You want to say a little about that?
Well, I just knew that what I was getting in school wasn't giving me the answers that I was looking for to really understand. And so this program is called PAIRS, Practical Application of Intimate Relationship Skills. And it was the first and still the most comprehensive course on intimate relationship skills it was a semester-long program, started at American University. And so I knew people who had done it, and I just thought, okay, this is the chance for me to really dive in. And so it didn't seem like we were working out, but I was going to go ahead and keep learning what I could.
Well, and my response was somewhere between horrified and terrified when she announced this, because Robin, as a therapist, had always had a lot of great ideas on how I could be a better partner. And the fact is, she was mostly correct, which didn't make it any easier to listen to. And so I'm like, oh man, I'm in trouble now. So I got busy, tried to dig up some dirt on the organization, and in the process, got kind of intrigued. This was back before Goleman's work on emotional literacy, and the whole idea that growth might not just be about awareness, but it could also be about emotional competence was a new idea for me at that time. And so I discovered that partners could tag along. So last minute, I got on the plane with her. I figured at least I'd get it firsthand. So
rather than me delivering the 24 days of content and telling him what he needed to do.
And I was amazed by what happened. It was really different than what I'd expected. I was the only non-therapist there. And Rob and I were the only couple, so we got volunteered to model all the tools. And I remember Robin saying she wanted to talk about parenting, and I'm like, I was an engineer at the time, had a surveying and engineering company, and I was just convinced all the therapists were going to hate me by the end of this conversation. And it went really different than I expected. And the upshot was, for the first time, I felt like Robin really heard and respected my point of view. Not that she necessarily agreed with it, she accepted that it was coming from a loving and caring place rather than me just being a jerk and an ass. And that was huge. That was huge for us. And also just for me, and realizing, wow, you can be in these places where you're just at each other and you can't get through it. And with just some simple structures, you can completely turn that around. That was a major aha. So by the end of the first 8 days, I'm like, okay, I'm in. Let's do this. And I just sold my company and was looking for what was next. And I ended up doing the whole training with her. We both became master teachers and trainers. And, that was 30 plus years ago.
Wow.
Well, I was so impressed. One, that he's willing to go, right? And two, willing to really dive into making this, something we did together. It's really increased my respect and trust so much. And I started to have my eyes open to all of the ways I have been and was undermining and contentious in the way I'd relate, even though it was much more subtle than my two partners had been. But boy, was it a part of, and my defensiveness, my needing to be right, my self-righteousness, all of this stuff that was kind of, coming through in a judgmental tone, and was shutting down communication and connection. So, I got to learn a lot and start to see and gave me, which is great, because otherwise we're kind of impotent to influence the outcome of the relationship if it's all about you and circumstance and chance meetings, and to be able to actually get my hands on the levers of my part in both deepening trust and intimacy as well as blocking it, made all the difference. And from there, we did make the decision to actually get married and create a life together, which, I said was 30 years ago. And boy, we needed those tools. We never would have stayed together without those tools. I'll just add one more piece, which is growing up. I mean, I never learned anything about how to handle conflict and differences. I never saw anger expressed directly, only behind closed doors. I never saw differences resolved. I had no tools. And that's a lot of what went wrong in my first marriage, by the way. I didn't know how to advocate for what I want or make space for the other person's needs without it in a direct way. So, I needed those tools. And boy, did it change things.
Well, often when I had an issue that I tried to bring to Robin, quickly it seemed typical that whatever issue I was bringing suddenly would get shifted, and the issue had now become what a lousy communicator I was. and that was
which didn't help him be a better communicator.
No.
And he's in trouble, and we never get to the issue itself. It's a very effective shield.
Yeah.
So I was committed to learning to be Robin's equal in terms of ability to communicate effectively, and it took a while, but I believe I'm there at this point.
Well, that's great. Well, some of the things I love about your story, and thank you for sharing it, is that so many couples like you would have ended the relationship at the beginning because you see the conflict, you see that there are issues. Part of what draws people together is their differences. And so knowing how to navigate those differences, I mean, what you described as the nourishing versus the boundaried, build responsibility is such a typical dynamic. And you both have something to add to the relationship and to complement the relationship. And so when you both were willing to get the work done, to do the work, to discover how you could do things differently, and both of you had the humility to say, I play a part and I am willing to learn and to grow. I mean, these are huge, and so many couples don't take that responsibility. They don't grow up with any kind of modeling, just like you didn't, Robin, and I didn't either. I grew up with anger, but it was in your face anger. There was
Destructive.
constant reactivity. Yeah. And so I didn't ever want to do what I saw, but I also had a partner who wasn't willing to do the work. And so I was reading all the books, trying to parent differently, trying to do it differently. And you do need to have your other partner come along for the ride, even if there's resistance in the beginning. You can't do it all alone. So how wonderful that both of you not only did the work, but now you work together and you teach. So that is such a beautiful story.
Thanks. Yeah, we can teach from our own experience, because even our kids say, if two people as different as you two can make a life together, let people know there's hope for anybody out there.
Yep. Yeah,
But we
it's
couldn't. I
true.
mean, those different, like you said, we're attract differences attract, and I see strengths in him that are undeveloped in me. But those same things make us crazy on a daily basis unless we can really communicate through this. So it does require more skill and more ability to really bridge before we can bridge them. Otherwise, we just polarize, you know.
Yeah. So many people are afraid of losing themselves. And that was the title of this episode is how do we stay together without losing ourselves? And especially in a second marriage or relationship later in life where we have built a certain level of autonomy and independence. And we don't want to meld into that other person and merge completely into that other person, which is often what happens when you're just trying to go along to get along and you're a people pleaser in former relationships. So how can couples maintain their autonomy and get along and be happy together?
Well, I think one thing is you need other relationships in your life is part of it. Um, we used to live in extended family communities, and it's a fairly recent phenomenon where mostly couples are just depending on each other and depending on each other for way more stuff than our parents and grandparents were looking for. And not just love, but also there's this whole sense that I should be self-actualized. I should be fulfilled as a human, and that you as my partner should be supporting me in that. And then you add that most of us don't subscribe to predefined roles in our relationship. So everything's a negotiation now, and it's just a really high bar. And the only possible way to get there and meet that is to bring some skill, and also I think have other communities. I'm a dancer. I have a whole dance community that I'm part of that Robin's not part of. And she has her own community. She was a prayer chaplain for many years. And that's been, I think, essential. That's one thing I would say is you can't depend on one person for everything.
I love that. It takes a village, right? It's I
Yes.
think we've grown so much in that direction where we think the partner has to be our best friend, our lover, our everything, and it's not
Financial
realistic.
partner,
Yeah,
teammate,
Aaron,
yeah,
co-parent.
co-parent. When you work together too, it adds another
Yeah,
layer, being all
exactly.
these things. It's a lot to place on any one relationship.
So,
And
Robin,
the
do you
other
have
thing,
anything to add to that?
yeah, so we have this model that I really like called the powergram. It's a way that couples can map out the areas of power and decision making, and that changes over time too. Areas of responsibility, but if there's like this is me and this is him, like where's the overlap? Where's the area of autonomy, right, where we get to decide without checking with the other person, what's so. Where are the things we must decide together? in this relationship, and again, that changes over time. Very different than in my first marriage, and we were all merged and raising children together, and everything seemed joint. Where are the things that we must agree, that have to do maybe with, where we live or, how we spend our time together? And where are the things that we need to have input, but really we can empower the other person to have the final say? And, for example, with blended families, we have different relationships with our biological children. And navigating what's the role we each have with each other's children and how that changes over time, but we obviously has huge impact on us, so we must be involved and have influence, and that's up for each couple to navigate, I think. And it changes as jobs change, as health changes, all kinds of things, stages of life, how big and small those circles are. But if we're two totally independent circles, then we don't really, have a relationship. So what I find is getting together when we're older is that there's a lot more in the autonomy sphere that's important to be able to trust and delegate. But that needs to be a mutual decision. We need to go through that and say, who decides, who's responsible for what? Sometimes it's just like default, like no one wants to take out the recycling, but who's going to do it? And, and sometimes it's by what matters to me most, like when we built the house, it's like, I care about the finishes and the colors, but he's got the expertise on all the mechanical and the design, so we have to. The point is to talk about that stuff, to have a way to talk about it. And where we differ, then we must use those conflict resolution tools.
Well, and I would also add there's one particular element that I think is essential in long-term relationships. This is part of, we have a quiz on our healthy relationship quiz on our website, and it's testing for which of 6 areas are most important for your relationship development. So the areas are friendship, passion, respect, fun and play, mission and values, and self-care. And of those, the one that I think's most relevant to this question in long-term relationships is respect. The root word from which we've extrapolated respect is pragma. The root of pragmatic. So it's the whole idea that over time, I'm going to learn what matters to change. And there are some things where it's really important to stand up for yourself and to do what you need to do to ask for change. And, that's essential. But I don't know, 90% of the things that might bother me or be a little rub with Robin are things that don't really matter. And so the idea with respect or pragmatic love is to be able to discriminate between those two categories and just let go of the chronic grievances around the little things that annoy me about my partner. And just an example, Robin mentioned I'm the neat person. So I just had this constant grudge that I was having to pick up after Robin all the time. And, I could tell where she had been in the house by the little piles of stuff she had left. And so, one day I'm picking up a bunch of shoes in a weird place, or I don't know, I'm just bothered. And I just stepped back and had an epiphany. And first of all, I realized Robin does a huge amount of stuff for us. And the reason she hadn't picked up that mess was probably because she's upstairs doing an important email. So first of all, it's not like she's not doing anything. She's doing a tremendous amount. And the other thing that occurred to me as I stood there reflecting is she's not going to change. in this way. Like, this is not going to change.
We've tried lots of things over the years, but I just don't see it.
This is just a fundamental difference that's not going to change. So I have two options. I can continue to be unhappy and be having these fast thoughts of grievance about Robin as part of my day as I pick up. Or I could just say, well, wait a minute. Maybe this is just my job in this relationship. Maybe this is my assignment. Picking up after Robin is what I do as part of having a happy home. And it's just made a huge difference.
That's a great example.
Yeah, and it's an example of the kind of respect that you can build in long-term relationships, which says, I hold you in such esteem. You are such a magnificent person. And I'm not going to let these little irritations get in the way of that being my major experience with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a couple who remarried, and she was 70 and he was like 78. And he has ADD. He does not plan well. And she wanted him to work with her to plan vacations. And he loves planning like the spontaneous part of a vacation. He could pick up and go at any point and be so excited about it. And she needs to be very particular. So they were having this conflict the first year of their marriage. And I said to her, what if you just planned? And what if you did the planning part because you like that and you're good at it, and let him plan the excursions? Like, do what you do best and appreciate that he can be more spontaneous than you. It's similar to what you're saying. It's we are drawn together for a reason. And instead of trying to make somebody into someone they're not, accept that they have certain things that they're better at. You have certain things you're better at. And then just let it go. And the hard part is the letting go. I mean, I have a daughter with ADD who used to leave stuff all over the house. And I was tearing my hair out. I thought she was doing it on purpose. I thought she left the front door open on purpose in the winter, when she'd go off to school. It would just irritate me so much. And I was like, okay, you can mess up your room, but these are common spaces. And I thought I was being realistic with my expectations, but she just didn't see it. Just like you said, she didn't see the mess. And so I learned to step into her shoes for a minute and to try to see the world through her eyes. And that helped me have compassion for her limitations. It doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it does help me understand when she was not able to do what I expected her to do. So I had more space in my heart because of that. So I can relate. And I think so many couples can relate to the neat and messy combination. I'm a neat person. I have a friend who walked into my house the other day. She goes, everything's in its place. And I said, yeah, I live alone. I can take care of my house because it's just me and I like having things in my place. But if I had a partner, it might be different and I'd have to negotiate those differences.
Yeah, I realize now it would have been much better. Do you have to get something off the stove? Yeah, it would have. I can smell it. It would have been much better if we'd had a duplex when we were raising kids and stuff, like two different, because we could have eliminated a lot of that. Because these are just things that are about who we are. And yet, on the other side of that, it is. And I think this has been the critical difference for me in this long-term relationship is it's essential to be willing to make waves and advocate for the things that really do matter for my happiness and well-being. Otherwise, they go underground. I'm disconnected. I'm aggrieved. It leaks out in other ways. And we don't actually clear it up and get to the bottom of it. And so having a partner who will do that, who will go to the mat and we will face it, but do that in an intentional way. And the tools we've learned to do that has made all the difference with someone who's tended to be more conflict avoidant like me.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about those tools, because I think it's important to help people know how to bring up hard conversations and to know that their message is going to be heard, which is also difficult in most relationships. I had a husband who walked away from every conversation that he wasn't comfortable with. And so, how can you encourage people to have those hard conversations?
But the first thing you just said is that if it's not going well, and if we start to unintentionally going down that slippery slope, we need to stop. Because once we're triggered, and once that's happening with me, it's going to elicit the same with him. If, my defensiveness will come up. If he gets critical, it's just not going to go well. So we have to be able to pause, take the time out, but it's not a never time out. It's, the basic rule of thumb we use is that within an hour, the person who asked for timeout is reached out to suggest another time to reconnect, within the next 24 hours when we're both available, when we're both resourced. And then we can employ a different approach and have a do-over, as we call it. And so, do you want to add anything, or should I?
Well, there's a whole host of different approaches, all of which are complementary. One is just doing simple, mundane things that tend to evoke positivity. And we have a number of different ways for people to go about that. Probably the most important is just to have a regular practice of gratitude. And the research on how that benefits us psychologically, emotionally, physically, in terms of outlook, terms of our social relationships, it's remarkable. And so we recommend that people once a day sit down and express their gratitude towards each other. And that doesn't necessarily need to be with the spouse. That could also be with a friend, with another family member. But just to have a regular practice where you sit down and name the things that you appreciate about another person. And the more specific, the better, the more generous, the better. So we offer people a lot of ways just to stay upbeat, stay positive, a way to make requests so that they're not offensive on the face of them.
Well, jump
please,
in about that. So the point is that doesn't solve the difficult conversations, but that creates more of a background of goodwill and trust and resiliency, knowing that there is, when there's a breakdown, when there's a problem, we don't go into overdraft in this love bank account, there's credit in the bank. And so there's enough goodwill and generosity to trust, that we can come back together. And so those are equally important, to build the background of goodwill, along with then the tools to wade into the conflict itself. And do you want to jump on that, or do you?
Yeah, other key elements are taking turns. Robin alluded to this before. The thing that goes so wrong is when we're both trying to be understood at the same time and in the same conversation. It almost never works out. It just ends up being mutually triggering.
No one's listening.
No one's listening. So one key thing in working through a difficulty is one person talks and the other person listens. And the person listening, that's all they do, is they listen and maybe offer some validation and at the end.
Listening doesn't mean you agree, that you see it the same way, that you're giving up your power, that you want the same thing. It doesn't mean any of that. It does mean you care. And so the listener needs to be able to put all of their thoughts and agendas and reactions on the shelf just for the period of time that you're the listener. And then we can switch, and both people get to have the floor, get to have that empathic listening. But that's one piece, and it's important to do that within we call the invitation rule. Is this a good time? Are you open and ready? Because we're not going to do that on the drop of a hat and be that kind of listener. It takes generosity and focus So that's the listening. But then the speaking part is much more difficult.
Well, and most people are given the right conditions. They know they're not going to be put down. They know they have some hope that this is going to go somewhere well, are really good at listening, almost without exception. People can do that when the conditions are right. On the other hand, in terms of speaking in my own behalf, asking for what matters to me, people are so bad at this almost universally. It's kind of shocking, really, how bad we are. And it's almost like we approach things in a way that's almost guaranteed not to turn out. So typically, Robin will do something that upset me. I will make an interpretation of what that means and what's going on with her. And that's where I start. So I start with telling Robin what's true about her that's bothering me. And it's just obnoxious right from the get-go.
Like,
and it's off-putting.
I'm not paying attention, or I don't care, or I'm, like whatever, mind reading, whatever's happening
Yes,
here.
which is something we need to say, but it's not a place to start. So the place to start is by actually talking about things that actually observable things, not interpretations. And then when I need to talk about my interpretation, I own it. This is my interpretation. This is what I'm making up in this situation.
This is my story about you.
Anyway, we have a 13 stage protocol for being able to successfully launch a significant issue. And the bottom line is, once people complete that process, it's inevitable that they actually not only understand about their partner's perspective that may have felt really threatening, but that they actually care and have empathy for them, which doesn't necessarily mean that they agree. But when both people really deeply understand and care about the other person's perspective, even if there's a sharp difference, it's miraculous what can happen in terms of sorting things out. So I think the point being, in terms of boundaries, knowing what you want and being able to communicate it in a way that has a good chance of being successful with your partner rather than upsetting, or with any other human as far as that goes.
Yeah, the knowing what you want part is so important. And so many people will just air grievances but not make a request. And so it's just like, you're wrong, you upset me, you're bad. And that's all that's interpreted is you're a bad person. And the other person's going to shut down because you've just been attacked. So can you demonstrate this, just give us a short snippet of how this might look with a grievance of something that's going on between the two of you, or a client that you have?
Sure. And I would make a distinction between a major issue, which does require a much bigger tool than we have time for here, versus just little mundane things that are irritating and annoying, which I think we can certainly successfully model that. And we refer to that as making forward-focused request. So having your requests be forward-focused.
Well, and like you said, Sandy, it's not fair to complain without making a request for change. It's not fair to say what's not working unless you provide a solution. Because otherwise you're just like that, and Michael will tell me, even if it's in my tone, he'll say that was like bad dog. That was like a bad dog tone. and leave him with any self-esteem, anywhere to go with that, right? Whereas sometimes, and I think that's what you were just saying about the request, sometimes we can skip the complaint altogether and just go to what we want instead, what we want going forward, and all the ways that would help. And when we do have to excavate the past and describe what happened, then that's the longer tool we use, called the empathy spiral, which we can do a little bit of. You probably don't want us to do the whole thing. But the forward focused request is something pretty simple that we could model, that, to show people a way to have it turn out. So asking is not a problem. this is what would happen if I wasn't using this tool. And this came up recently, and I had a moment to think about this. The way I would start.
Well, and what's your objective? Your objective is to come in the house.
Yeah. So,
Oh.
so when I come home and it's late or dark, I really like to know that the lights are on, the door is unlocked, and I'm like welcomed into my home. And if that's not the case,
So it's a happy, and so this is what you're looking for, is coming home and having that be a happy experience. That's your objective.
I'm really, that we're
Yeah.
connected and I feel warm and close. And so those are all the things that I'm really wanting. But what I'll tend to do is, especially if I'm tired or grumpy, is just come in and say, what's the deal? You locked me out again? Like that, don't you want me home? Like, what's going on? Aren't you thinking about me?
And so
So you can see.
notice the impact. Like, am I being led to some happier, better place in our relationship, some future place? No, it's all backwards. Emotionally, it's not enrolling. It's all about the past and her
You
unhappiness.
blew it.
What's wrong with me?
You
And
must
this
not
is-
care about me.
This is so typical how when we want something better, we start by contrasting that with something bad that didn't work.
And I've
to
told
make a
you a million
contrast.
times how much this matters to me. And why can't you remember a simple request? Like, I could go.
So Robin's legitimate desire to go this way has been completely sabotaged, and all the energy is going in the opposite
And
direction.
how do you feel when I talk to you that way?
I feel annoyed. I feel an impulse to push back and, defend myself, make some kind of case on my part. But my attention is not on what you're talking about. It's on how you're talking to me is what I'm paying attention to, rather than what you're actually asking for.
Mhm.
So
Okay, so do over.
Yes,
Shake it
do
up.
over.
Shake it up.
this is one of our tools, by the way, the do-over.
We all need do overs.
We give each other permission when we catch ourselves
Mhm.
in an unproductive thing to request a do-over.
Let's do that again. That means
Yes.
he's going to erase all that. It never happened.
Gone.
Shake it off.
Fresh start.
Fresh start. Okay. Michael, I have a request. Are you open to listening? Do you have a moment?
Yeah, this is a good time. Sure.
Okay, great. I would not, especially as, and when it's, when I'm coming home late, I would so love it to know that you left the light on or gone and turned the light on and have unlocked the door for me. So that when I come in the door, show up at home, tired, stuff in my arms, everything, I don't have to lock it. And I'd feel so welcomed and know that you were thinking about me, because I know it's not easy to get all the way over there and do that. And I feel so cherished and glad to see you.
Okay.
How's that sound?
I will keep that in mind. Thanks for letting me know.
Right. It creates warmth and a sense of what your need was that wasn't met. And so he doesn't have to read your mind, or you don't make up a story that he did it on purpose because he doesn't care about you, it's a beautiful thing if people can do it. So there are a lot of people who can't do this, obviously, or don't know how, don't want to.
If I believe I do have some insight about Robin that might be useful for her, some perspective, then our agreement is, first of all, I ask her permission. Can I run something by you?
Can you check something
Can I
out?
check an assumption out that I'm making about you? And then I name the assumption. And then the next step is I'm quiet while she says what's actually true for her. And in answering that, she's looking for a kernel of truth, because probably as her partner, I'm not completely off base. But my agreement in all of this is I accept whatever answer she gives me as true for her at face value, that she's the expert on her, and I can offer my theories, but that's all they are, and that Robin's the expert on Robin.
it is hard to listen to people who make up stories about other people and do that a lot. And I love the curiosity piece and the checking in piece.
And the other thing we can do with someone who's difficult like that, and again, varying results, but we can just let them know the impact. It's like when I hear you talk that way about whatever, I feel defensive or protective or, and that may not go any better with our parents, but with a peer that you really want to, create a closer connection with, then they need to know the impact they're having. And that can be motivating. That's the kind of relationship we want to have, to know your impact on me. It is
we don't
what
know.
can create more closeness.
Yeah, I love that. So there's so much more we could talk about. Unfortunately, we have to come to a close today. And I'm going to ask you the last question I ask everyone, which is, what are your final words of advice for anyone who wants to go on their last first date?
One thing I would say is, while relationships seem like the huge, mysterious, unpredictable, and sometimes difficult territory, particularly because the youngest sides of us come up with the people we're now most attached to. And so our least mature, developed selves show up. And so while it's fraught, with all of that, what I didn't know and what makes all the difference is to know that there are, just with simple, powerful tools and with the right support, those things are not that hard to navigate, to change. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier than I ever realized, because I just didn't have the tools and support. And it's so easy to think there's something uniquely wrong with me or us. And this is just the terrain of being in an intimate relationship. It's going to bring up everything that's incomplete about all our past relationships and, of course, what it was like growing up. Like, that's going to be there. But that's the fertile ground for healing, for helping, having a corrective experience now. Like, we have a chance to help each other get what we really wanted then and heal and grow, not only together, but some of our wounds, some of our history.
Beautiful. And Michael?
It's been a while since I went on a last first date with anyone other than Robin. But I guess what comes to mind is about 7 years into our relationship, I realized that it wasn't working. I had developed an emotional infatuation for someone else, which kind of woke me up, was a little bit of a red flag. And so I asked Robin if we could stop the marriage that we had initiated 7 years earlier and go on a provisional basis for a while. And so we did that. And I think, I feel like last year we finally got to the place we were looking for, which is to be in a relationship without any chronic grievances, like just none. And so
we've been on a semi-provisional for 30 or 23 years, but nobody outside knows that. But keeping it fresh and alive, so we don't fall into, we have to stay together no matter what.
So my point being, we've been going on our first date for a long time. That's because people get into intimate partnerships and start taking each other for granted. And the truth is, the key is to be making it always fresh and to always recognize that even when you've been with someone for a long time, there's still fundamentally a mystery.
Well, I love that you don't take each other for granted, that you realize that you have to put the effort in. But with the right tools, it doesn't feel like this just like slugging so hard, and the hard work that I think a lot of people think it's not worth doing. And I think that from what you're sharing today, there's also so much personal growth that happens with the right partner. You have to look at yourself. You have to look at your younger self and your least emotionally developed self, and see the ways that you might have been sabotaging the relationship. And I think that it's the most gratifying thing when it works. It's the most rewarding thing. It's kind of like parenting. It can be really, really challenging and also the most rewarding thing that you can do. So it's so much of it is about the tools and having the right skill set. And I appreciate the work that you two are doing, not only for others, but within your own relationship and modeling that for other people.
Yeah, that growth mindset. I mean, that's key. You have to have a partner who shares that, right? Who's willing to, that's the first thing,
That would be my primary thing I would be looking for in a new partner is, are they fundamentally oriented towards growth?
willing to grow and learn and keep learning through life. And then we can really embark on that together, that journey, and trust that whatever happens, we can grow through it together. Yeah.
I love that. And unfortunately, so many people do not have a growth mindset. They're so protective and shut down, not willing to see their part. It's like the problem is out there. It's not within me. And with that attitude, you're not going to really grow. So tell us where people can find both of you.
Well, our website is couples.solutions. That's the easiest place. I would just mention a couple things there. One, we do a 2-hour introduction to true love. And the other thing I would suggest is there's a tab on there called PQ, stands for Positive Intelligence. And that is...
You're familiar with that?
Sure. I took the course. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Exactly. So I'm an instructor of positive intelligence groups. And one of the things that has been, everybody knows that relationships are hard work, right? Well, here's what I've discovered is the truth is that I'm hard and I'm a piece of work. And if I can manage that, then my relationships go pretty well. And so this is a phenomenal tool for dealing with my own mental ruminations, all the ways in which I sabotage myself with unhelpful thoughts, and a way to just find serenity and calm and resilience, regardless of what's going on externally to me. And for
a good tool.
A lot of people, certainly for me, that was a real game changer. So
it's a good
I would
tool.
recommend that for everyone, whatever your relationship status is. We can all use more calm, more peace of mind.
Yeah, I use the positive intelligence saboteur assessment when I first start working with a client to help identify where they sabotage themselves and how they show up in relationships. There's so much good stuff in there. So thank you both so much. You're such a font of information and good information on helping couples succeed. And I appreciate having you here today.
Thank you. And thanks for all you do to make the world a better place.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really a delight to be with you. So
thank you.
Let's see.
And thanks everybody for listening. If you love our show, please do us a favor and follow this show, share it with your friends, leave us a great rating and review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. And as always, here's to your last first date. If you are ready to get unstuck, gain new tools, become more empowered, and finally find your last first date, I'd love to talk to you. Fill out an application to be considered for a complimentary half-hour love breakthrough session at lastfirstdate.com/application. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Music Unlimited. You can listen to over 70 million songs and thousands of playlists and stations. Plus, you can now stream your favorite podcasts like Last First Date Radio. You can listen to any song, anytime, anywhere, on any of your devices. Get Amazon Music Unlimited for free for 30 days. Just head on over to getamazonmusic.com/lastfirstdate to learn more and claim this offer.